Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for a talk with the author of Building Community Food Webs. We are happy to have you here. We're recording this presentation too for so you can share it out afterwards with folks who weren't able to join. But this is something that's very exciting to have Brighton and Historic Splendid Valley and our work here featured in this new book. For those who don't know me, my name is Annalie Barabee. I am the Agriculture Innovation Specialist. It is a joint position with the City of Brighton and Adams County. And the work I'm tasked with is implementing the district plan, which is we'll learn more about that, but it's a joint plan with the city and the county to preserve our farmland, encourage local food production, and promote agritourism in the South Brighton area. And we are joined tonight by Ken Meader, who is the author of Building Community Food Webs, and Tim Ferrell, who is one of the co-owners of Berry Patch Farms. And how this evening will go, we will start by hearing from our speakers. We'll hear from Ken and then from Tim, and I'll talk a little bit at the end about kind of our work since the plan was adopted and some of our plans for the future. And then before we open it up for questions, I'll share a little bit about a virtual tool that was put together in collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce that has information about how to visit our local farms and what they all offer. So that's just a little sneak peek of something I'll share towards the end, and then we'll have ample time for Q&A. And if you have any questions, you can chat them in as we go, or wait till the end and we'll give you the opportunity to ask your questions. So to start, I will hand it over to Ken Meader, and I thought it would be appropriate to read from the back of the book a little bit about Ken. So this is the book we're talking about. It was published at the end of last month, called Building Community Food Webs. And Ken Meader, the author, is one of the most experienced food system analysts in the United States, having worked for over 50 years in community capacity building. His economic analyses have promoted food networks in 144 regions in 41 states, two provinces, and 4 tribal nations. And Ken, he'll talk more about this, I'm sure, but he was also part of the consultant team that developed the district plan, which is the joint plan by the city, adopted by the City of Brighton and Adams County that I mentioned. And so he had a firsthand account developing a market study to help inform the development of the plan, and also reached back out to learn about what we've been doing to implement it, and included it as a chapter in his new book. So I'll turn it over to Ken to talk more about the book and his perspective and what he has learned. So I will unshare my my screen and let you get started. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Annalie. It's great to be here and appreciate your taking the time to feature my book and also just have this conversation. I'm hoping to learn a lot about what's happened in the community since I was last there. I wanted to just say one thing really quickly. I'm not simply the author of a book, but I'm also the president of a nonprofit consulting and research group called Crossroads Resource Center. And it was in that capacity that I was part of the Logan Simpson team doing research for the project. And I hope that writing a book doesn't make me think people think I'm simply a book author at this point, because I still would love to stay active in these food issues as I can. I also just want to thank everybody for collaborating in Adams County and Brighton to make this happen. I'd say what we're talking about tonight is my favorite story from the whole book in terms of when I'm talking to people with an excitement. I'm really thrilled to pass on the decisions that were made and the really courageous investment that folks in Brighton made. I also want to thank Tim and Claudia Farrell for just getting this process launched and for just setting up shop with the farm and making good things happen for a long time to really allow this process to take shape. Terry Freeman from Three Forks Consulting really did a lot of the hard work interviewing people, some very difficult interviews at a very contentious time. And I really want to thank her for the work that she did to really make this project work as well as possible. And Jeremy Call, especially from Logan Simpson and the rest of the Logan Simpson team for bringing me onto the team. I was really quite thrilled when they called, and it was a very wonderful experience for me. I think that this is an issue that's really, Brighton's taking lead on something that's quite huge in every metro area that I work in. And as Annalie said, I've worked in 41 states. And there is a constant pressure right now because most cities have grown up where farmland is available. That's why there are cities there. And that means that now as we have more suburbia and more intense development, farmland is very threatened. And the prices of farming because of that development are way beyond the cost of what farmers can now afford. So it's a really critical issue for any metropolitan area in the country to address this. It's very difficult for farmers to get to survive even without having to buy land at development value prices. So it's a really quite dramatic dilemma for people. I think also Brighton's really lucky compared with some regions I've worked with because you have several thriving farms, not only Tim and Claudia's farm, the Berry Patch, but also the others that have been there for as long as 100 years or more, who have really settled in, been good corporate citizens in the community. And, you know, Minneapolis, for example, where I live, has almost no farmland left. We have lots of farms within 3 or 4 hours, but we have no land within the city boundaries. And to have large working produce farms, which often were the ones who got forced out of business, that's a real terrific asset that Brighton has that many people do not have. If you get a copy of the book, you can read about Phoenix, which is the another chapter of the book, which is a really very different story on development because there the city, Maricopa County and the city leaders have really sort of turned over the city development regime to the idea of we're just going to build more housing and we're going to build more commercial strips and we're going to build more factories. And they do that thinking that they need to increase their tax base, when in reality, often the tax base they generate from that development doesn't even pay for the cost of services that are required for that development. So it's sort of a treadmill that city governments and county governments get on trying to address an issue that really is very difficult to solve. I think the map for Maricopa County shows a future of maybe 0.4% of their county land being zoned in agriculture in the future, when they're spending $12 billion a year buying food, almost all of it coming from somewhere else in a town and a county that has a very rich heritage of agriculture, mostly, however, cotton farms, alfalfa farms, and just a few hardy people doing some of the most productive produce farming I know of in the country, but having a very difficult time getting a purchase politically to keep farming. Another story you can read about the book is Dakota County, Minnesota, which is the final chapter of the profiles. And that just features this very far-sighted effort to protect the water quality in the Mississippi River Valley, which goes along Dakota County. And that was expressed as a whole network of greenways to provide room for wildlife to roam, but also buffer strips between development and the river, and also an amenity for housing development. And that's a very inspiring story of its own, because you have a county staff person who worked very quietly for decades to try to nourish a process politically where the county government would support keeping green space and increasing some housing density in some places to make sure that open space got preserved elsewhere. It's a very wonderful story to have as well. Another resource I think that we have to draw on is the Agrarian Trust, which is a national effort that's been forming in the last few years, where it's only active in 10 states, and I don't think Colorado is one of them right now, I'm not sure. But it's an effort to raise money and set up a board of people who are operating in each community, in each state, to buy farmland, hold farmland, and preserve it for agriculture in the future. And that trust version may be a very interesting model of kind of holding land in a commons that could be helpful to Adams County and Brighton in the future. With that in mind, let me just sort of very quickly read a short section from the book, because it'll describe one of the things that I went through in my time in Brighton. This is really from the chapter on Brighton, and it's a section called "The Momentum Shifts" from page 182. I'm reading this mostly to give you a little sample of what the writing is like. For me, the discussion turned one day at a meeting of key city and county staff convened at the Adams County Government Center. I tried to adopt as neutral a tone as possible when describing what our research had found. In short, historic farms were being abandoned, water rights had been sold, and regional agricultural infrastructure was fragmenting. The farm families who had thrived growing vegetables in the past had stated clearly that they could not afford to buy any more farmland in Brighton at prevailing prices. Lots of developers were happy to purchase land as it became available, but few, if any, would hold any interest in agriculture. Some rich individual might intervene to purchase farmland, but unless an unusual person came along who wished to spend their fortune to farm at low margins, it was unlikely to be cultivated. This left the city and the county as the only entities that could potentially purchase land for the purpose of retaining it for agricultural use. It would be a financial stretch to purchase these properties, of course, but the alternative was that farmland would disappear. At risk were not only the livelihoods of the heritage of Adams County farmers, but also $22 million of annual income earned by local farm workers. Further, I suggested such a purchase might help break the impasse. Suppose the city or county purchased one farm from a dissenting farmer who wanted development value for their land. This would send two signals at once. First, that the city and county were not going to try to condemn the land or squeeze landowners on price, so the retirement options were secure. And secondly, that these public bodies were committing themselves to a future for agriculture in the area. There was reason, therefore, to keep one's hand in farming. That's just a brief sample, and it's mostly kind of the moment at which, for my mind, the discussion seemed to really turn from feeling quite hopeless to really quite hopeful. And hopefully that is something that is reflected in your experience too, those of you participating in the call. One of the reasons I wrote the book was that this contains a lot of stories that I have the most fun telling when I'm talking with a client or when I'm doing public speaking. It's the stories that, for me, encapsulate some of the big issues and some of the really innovative stuff that people are doing at the grassroots that often do not get taken up by the national media or by more prominent speakers. So I hope the book is useful for folks to sit down and read together and think about, well, what's happened in Tucson, Arizona? What's happened in Dakota County, Minnesota? What's happened in Hawaii? And think about how that applies or doesn't apply in Brighton and Adams County. Maybe just chew through it to sort of say, okay, what would we like to try to do here next? Or how could this book help us connect with other groups around the country that can help us answer the questions that we're going to run into as we try to move into a different future with the Splendid Valley. In particular, I think the Athens, Ohio story is interesting, along with the Montana story, because they're both stories about how food processing played a role in helping promote development among farms and among low-income people. And in two very different climates. One, Southeast Ohio, bordering on Appalachia, but a college town that had also considerable poverty, and trying to bridge those worlds with restaurants and locally owned businesses, and very successfully using processing as a way of helping people start livelihoods and building an awareness among the wider community about the importance of local foods. In Western Montana, a very different story. In a sparsely populated town of in a town of 2,000 in a sparsely populated area, where a food processing center has helped a whole cooperative of farmers flourish and has really created a lot of new opportunities for schools and universities and hospitals that want to buy food produced by local farms. The story in Tucson, I think, is quite interesting because there's a food bank that's really committed itself to finding ways to help its low-income clientele become more powerful, build more capacity. It's helped foster food businesses. It's helped people run for office. It's actually played a big role in helping a community garden form in a low-income neighborhood that became a real focal point for the community to come together I'm sorry, as a school garden that became a community gathering point because it was sort of this place where people came to volunteer and met each other and did wonderful work after that. And the final story I'll mention is Hawaii is a place where we found, unfortunately, that the state of Hawaii, after feeding itself a population of 800,000 people before the plantations came in, is now importing at least 85% of its food from at least 2,500 miles away, and really frightened about what would happen if there's a supply breakdown and the ships cannot get through or fossil fuel becomes scarce. And there's a very interesting discussion in Hawaii about how do we bring more food production back to the islands. But unfortunately, the farming system itself, after the plantations were dismantled, has been very weak. And the sad fact was we learned that there was more coming into the state economy from food stamps than from agriculture. And so we realized that through the research that one of the best things that the state could do was to make sure everybody who was eligible for food stamps would get their benefits, and that would create more money and more spending power in the state of Hawaii than farmers could provide in the short term until we developed a much stronger agriculture and much stronger infrastructure. So those are just some stories that are there. I hope you can read that and chew it over and get back to me with ideas or thoughts you have after that. And also keep me in mind if there's ways I can help you move from the district plan to the Historic Splendid Valley and whatever you decide to tackle in the future. And thanks very much for this chance to meet with you again. I look forward to learning from Tim and others what's been happening since I was last there, which is now 3 or 4 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ken. That was great to hear, and thank you for a little bit of a taste of what's in the book. And hopefully folks, who haven't had a chance to purchase a copy, I'll have the link up at the end to right to the publisher website, but it is, I'm sure, also available on Amazon and other booksellers. So definitely encourage you to pick up a copy and read not only our story, but all the others in the book. So thank you, Ken. Again, if you have just joined us, if you have questions, you can either send them through to us on the chat function or save them to the end. Either way, we'll answer them at the end of this hour, and would love to hear what your questions are for us. And comments as well. So next we have Tim Ferrell. Tim Ferrell is a local farmer in Historic Splendid Valley. He is a co-owner of Berry Patch Farms that grows a number of fruits and vegetables for UPIC, CSA, and Farm Store. He's been in the area for many years now, and his farm his land is preserved through a conservation easement, which was done with the help of the Conservation Fund maybe 15, 20 years ago. He can give the better dates on that. But Tim was also vocal and a big advocate for the development of the district plan and the preservation of farmland in the area, and was featured in the book. So I will turn it over to Tim to tell his story and talk about both, his thoughts on preserving farmland and thoughts on the agriculture in the area, and then thoughts on the future as well.
Thank you, Annalee. As I look at all the list of attendees here, I know everyone. We know each other very well, except for Beverly. I haven't had the pleasure to meet you. I hope to at some point. Make it kind of short and to the back history of what has happened here at the farm. Claudia and I moved up here about 24 years ago and purchased a farm, and our realtor suggested that in order to afford the mortgage payment, we'd subdivide 10 acres off the 40 acres, and then subdivide that into 2-acre plots, making it available for little mansion houses. So we did that, we rezoned it, and then after about living here for 3 months, one day, Claudia and I turned to each other and said, what are we thinking? This is not good. So we tore down the for sale signs on the property and rezoned it back to agriculture and said, the Lord will take care of it. We'll be able to afford the mortgage. And so we have. With that in mind, then we said, well, then, we need to leave a legacy. We don't want this farm in this area to be built up commercially. What can we do? Well, about that time, Adams County Open Space was having I think a year-end meeting for the community. And so we went there and we met individuals. And I'm not sure if we met Chris Quinlan then or not. Nevertheless, we were very, very much overwhelmed with joy that an avenue to protect the farm was through an easement, a conservation easement. And so we did that, and Chris Quinlan just took us through the steps, and the rest was history. And so our farm became, hopefully, forever preserved as farm ground. Then, years kept rolling by, and we thought about other farms, and perhaps they could be placed in a conservation easement. So the ball started to roll, and the city of Brighton developed a sub-ag committee after much to do with the Green Mile. Alan, I'm not going to say uprising, but it was your baby. It was the Green Mile movement. And this committee then looked into the future of farming in Brighton. And after 1 year research, they said, a formal committee, advisory committee, should be made to look into the future of farming in Brighton. And so there were like 4 or 5 of us that we applied, and we were on the sub-ag committee under the offices of Brighton's Park and Recreation, Gary Wardle's direction. We had a great time, and one of the models we had of farm participation was the Red Rooster route up in Washington State, whereby a number of farms get together and they have special festivals. There's no competition. They're all together. Everyone is buying into the same piece of pie. So we always had hopes for that. Then came along the research on the district plan, and we know how that followed through, and that was exciting. And that was really, I think, a really high point when both entities, the city and the county, were able to get together, sit down with representatives, and do business with what they needed to do. And both the county commissioners and city council of Brighton unanimously passed the district plan. And I thought that was a really high point. I know for the dissenting farmers, it was not. I received a very nasty phone call from one of the dissenters, but nevertheless, life goes on. Where are we now? Well, we've purchased more properties. They're in land easement. And as I understand, there is another one under, not under contract, I guess, but is being negotiated with the conservation fund. So we're lining up a number of farms. Let me see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 farms so far, with the 5th one hopefully will come on board. So that's exciting, that one of the basic ideas of the district plan was to preserve farmland, and that is really great. I am, though, wondering now, what about the food process, the food system? Maybe that's a future goal of ours, or could be. How do we make that happen? A preservation plan, I think, could have possibilities like of freezing our products so the season could be longer, could be sold to schools as well as to food banks. So we won't always have to rely on the fragileness of fresh produce. So here we are, we're getting ready for another season, and you know, the weather is our biggest challenge, I think. I think that's enough.
Thank you, Tim.
Is that all right, Annalee, or do you want to hear more? We can go into chapter 2, but I thought,
We can start with chapter 1, and then I'm sure we'll have, you know, some questions and comments that'll keep us going. So unless you have more you want to say now, I think that's good, and I can kind of fill in some of what's been done to date.
Well, I really appreciated the Brighton Chamber of Commerce, particularly Yvette Martinez, her trying to get all the farmers together to like even have a tour and so forth. And it was just frustrating that only a few attended the monthly meetings. And so this idea of the Red Rooster route, I had to give it up. I have a broken heart, but it'll mend. And we just have to move on to different horizons, I think, and work with the farmers that want to stay together and have a sense of community. One of the biggest blows to me is it just chaps my hide when East Brighton residents want a Sprouts or a Trader Joe's. And then I respond, this is under the your neighborhood platform, that Brighton has 4 farm markets, which no other town has. Have you ever been to the farm markets, folks? You know? So there is a lack of knowledge, I believe, and sensitivity in some areas of Brighton about the farms.
And that's something I can talk a little bit more to and share the tool that you mentioned, the Chamber of Commerce, that they helped, were instrumental in helping get that put together, with the hopes that it will help more people to visit our farms. So thank you, Tim.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So I will go ahead and share my screen. I have a few slides to share. Okay. So what I wanted to talk about is some of the work that's been done since the district plan was implemented, and a long time after, you know, some of the backstory that Tim mentioned happened. So, you know, this is a project, a process that has been building and in place for many years, you know, born out of the recognition that Brighton is an agricultural area, has a rich agricultural history, has some of the best, you know, prime farmland soils in the state for producing vegetables, and you know, senior water rights to make that happen in a place like Colorado. So, you know, this is something that has been building for a long time, and with the formation of the district plan, was able to, you know, that enabled us to formalize some of this work. As Tim mentioned, though, there's still a lot to be done. There's still, you know, a lot of opportunity to keep realizing that vision. So let me advance my slides. So I'll just mention some of our completed projects, some of the many things that we've been able to do since the district plan was adopted. So first is just mentioning the importance, I think Ken touched on it as well, of the city and county partnership that was really solidified through that district plan creation, and continues to this day. So the city of Brighton and Adams County jointly adopted the plan. There is a joint commission, the District Plan Commission, that advises on the implementation of the plan and acts as the ambassadors for it. There are a number of other IGAs and agreements in place to keep this work going. It's a cross-jurisdictional partnership as well as cross-departmental, with the planning departments and parks and recreation departments, as well as others from both communities, keeping this work going. Land preservation, Tim mentioned this. This is a key piece of what we have been able to do. I'll show a map in a minute, but Tim mentioned I don't have the number of farms. I should have looked that up while he was talking that have been preserved, but it's more than 4 or 5. Maybe I'll look that up and share it at the end. But a number of farm properties in the area. Some are dry land, but a lot of them, most of them are irrigated farms that produce, in most cases, fruits and vegetables. And that's about, I don't know if I mentioned 445 acres to date, and that's conservation easements on privately held land. So land that's protected like Tim's property, but is still privately owned, as well as properties that have been acquired, as Ken mentioned, that model of acquiring the land, either the city or the county, owning it, leasing it back out so that we're ensured that it's protected, and we put conservation easements on those properties as well. So land preservation through the adoption of the district plan has continued, and I'd say gained speed in terms of the work that we've been able to do and the land that we've been able to preserve that's definitely at risk in this area for development, and even just the water rights being sold, because it is just such a valuable area. We developed the Historic Splendid Valley brand, which is in the corner, and have done some outreach work a couple years ago now to help get the word out about that brand. But the idea is to help to unify the area. It's both city and county land, so having one name to encompass it, and also just a way for our farmers to market their products and celebrate this place, and a way to help to educate more of our residents about the importance of our local farms and the fact that they exist here, and just building that pride in what we have here. So that brand was developed a couple years ago. We also did a local foods workshop back in February of last year and brought together a diverse group of stakeholders from some of our local farms, our food assistance organizations, school districts, local hospital, and a number of others to talk about that connection between the food that's grown in this area and issues of food access, food insecurity, wanting to encourage folks to eat more healthy food, to encourage our schools to build relationships with our local farms. A number of different topics encompassed with that, but a chance to bring everyone together in person while that was still possible. About 60 people attended that day-long workshop, and we have shared out all the materials, and those conversations have been able to continue. And lastly, well, not lastly, but one of the last top things that we've done is a transfer of development rights study. So this was a way to look to explore different ways of preserving farmland, and using a different funding mechanism to do so. So that was something that was called out in the plan to explore. We found that we can't do a cut and dry development rights TDR program, but we did come up with some action steps and explored something that has worked in other places. So that's just a snapshot of some of the things that the district plan, and having it codified, having it with a specific action plan, has enabled us to do in this area. This is the map I mentioned. So these are all the green properties, and the cross-hatched ones are all properties preserved in this area, and this boundary is Historic Splendid Valley. So the properties in green are ones that are acquired by the city or the county and preserved for agricultural use. And the ones with the red crosshatch are privately owned with conservation easements. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 properties total. And that is something that is very exciting, and we've really focused in this area below the Fulton Ditch, near the South Platte River, where there is a lot of that prime farmland soil that's still being farmed. And this map was created by the Conservation Fund. who's a key partner in a lot of this work in the area through building those relationships, acting as a funding source to help make sure that properties are purchased when the time is right, and then the city or the county or the other entity that ends up purchasing them has the time and can get together the resources to preserve the property. So kind of that go-between. I didn't explain that very well, but they're an important partner as well for both the city and the county. And just a quick look ahead to some of our future projects that are planned. So as mentioned, a key piece of this work is preserving as much of that prime farmland as we can, and building, as you might have seen in the map, a lot of those properties are connected. So building a connected, contiguous area of preserved farmland to ensure that, all of this great work can continue, and this, food system can continue to develop because we have the crops being grown, we have the land being farmed. So that's ongoing. We are in the process of finalizing a wayfinding signage program. So the idea with this is to help build that visibility for our local farms. So these signs will be up around the area and directing folks to different properties, different farms that are publicly accessible, that are inviting the public to come and visit. So this will be another way to encourage visitors, residents alike, to come and visit our farms and make sure they know exactly how to get there, and create a buzz about the area. And we hope to expand on that wayfinding signage program in the future. Exploring some zoning changes to ensure that for both the city and the county, agricultural practices that make our farms viable are allowed and legal. So just looking at our city and county zoning regulations to make sure that we are allowing and encouraging the different types of agriculture, the creative agritourism uses and educational opportunities that the district plan vision talks about, making sure that those are able to be performed and done in this area within reason, obviously, with looking at all of the greater context as well. And implementing that Historic Splendid Valley brand, figuring out different ways to use it to get the word out in the area and more broadly, and to help us support this, this group of farmers that we have here. And more. And the last thing I wanted to show is a map that was put together. This was a project funded by the Colorado Tourism Office with some implementation funds. And it is there's a virtual map, and they also did a brochure for us, and it shows each of the farms in the area that is publicly accessible, invites visitors. So not all of our farms are on here. Petraco Farms, Dakota Farms, and some others aren't on here since they aren't inviting visitors to come and walk through their fields. But all these farms have opportunities to visit their farm stands, visit the pick berries, pick flowers, pet animals. And so I will actually, real quick, before we launch into the Q&A portion, I just wanted to show the virtual component of this. So I will stop sharing that and real quick share this. Which hopefully you can see when I click on Pulaski, do you see the description pop up? No? Okay, I picked the wrong one. Technical difficulties, 1 second. How about now? Do you see the different descriptions pop up? Okay, well, that didn't work, but I'll share the link at the end. Oh, technology. I'll share the link at the end. So what it is, it's a virtual map. It looks like the one I had up on the screen, but when you click on the different squares, you can find out a little bit more about the farm. You can click on the link and go right to their website and find out how to visit them. So it's a good visual representation about where all of our farms are in relation to each other, and something that you can share with visitors who come to see you if you live in the area, or help you plan a trip. So that is what I wanted to share with you all. And now I'd love to open it up to questions and comments. I know we have folks here who have some experience in the area, and as well as some others. So would love to hear what you have to say. So if you would like to just chat in your question, feel free to put that in the chat box, and we will address it to whichever one of the panelists you'd like us to ask, or all of us. Or if you would like to ask your question directly, if you raise your hand, use that function to click raise hand, then we will allow you to speak, and then you'll be able to ask your question directly. So it looks like, I believe this is Christy Dowling. So I'm going to click allow you to talk, and I hope that works. All right, Christy, you might have to unmute yourself. Oh, yep.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Okay, all I see is a black screen now. Can you hear me okay, though? No.
Yes, we can hear you. Sorry,
Okay.
I was on mute.
Thank you. There, I see Tim. That's wonderful. Well, anyway, just a couple of things to kind of add comments. This Wednesday, the Open Space Advisory Board will be voting on the Historic Splendid Valley property. We're calling it property number 1. I believe it's over 100 acres of farmland and over 100 water shares. And they will hopefully be making a positive recommendation to the board, the county board of commissioners, that will meet, I think, in June. So hopefully in June we'll know the outcome of whether that'll get funding for that particular property. I think something that Tim mentioned, and you did as well, Annalee, I'm seeing more and more through the local foods workshop that was sadly short-lived because of the COVID outbreak, that getting back into that type of looking at that analysis and working in across those various entities, that maybe we could eventually move toward a year-round food system more locally, that Tim, I think you were kind of referring to, because I think the county needs to see where not only where its dollars are going, but that something's coming out of this particular area that is spreading to them, to not just a city thing or just an agritourism. I really do think there could be some, that may be a way to get money to drive the other aspect of getting year-round food processing. And Ken Meader had mentioned Dakota County, Minnesota, the concept there. And now I realize that's what I've been trying to think about. So I'm so glad to know about that in the book, of how they were looking at natural resources and the conservation, preservation, whatever we want to call all of that, those kinds of, that lens to look at food development also for the local community, that there's only positives that can, I think, that can come out of that, because we do have like Bar Lake State Park. So I was very appreciative to hear more about the Dakota County, and I'm going to be looking that up. So that's my song and dance and information. So thank you. I'm enjoying this very much.
Thank you, Christy. And Ken or Tim, if you want to respond to anything that she said, or
I would just add very quickly that, one of the conversations that was going on when I came to Brighton several years ago was the bike paths that are along the river and the green space there, and bringing that green space into the community and making it easy for people who are biking up from Denver to really come in and have places to taste food and to have experiences that would bring them to Brighton. And I think that would be, you actually have more development like that already than Dakota County had when they started. So I think you have some very natural ways of integrating those possibilities.
we don't have anyone from our Parks Department on, but I guess it was last summer, completed a trail that goes all the way from Denver up to Brighton along the South Platte River. And there's a connection over to Brighton further north, but yeah, there is a hope to bring people down into the area and to, in the future have some trails that wind their way along the ditches and through Historic Splendid Valley as well. So
if I may jump in, Ken, and that's good to know. I think maybe it's like you're saying, Annalee, nobody hears from the Parks Department, and they're the crucial ones from the county standpoint that are going to make or break this, I think, in some respects.
Other questions, please just click the raise hand function or comments from folks on the call. I know some of the folks here have been working on this for a while as well. Looks like Christine Quinlan, I will allow you to talk.
Mike's muted, Chris. There you go.
Hi, everyone. This is such a wonderful presentation, and I don't know that I really have a question. I guess I just wanted to pontificate a little bit, but in a couple of ways. And I guess I wanted to just validate Ken's prediction and say that clearly Tim and Claudia were the true pioneers in this whole effort because they conserved their farm at a time that predated in the adoption of the district plan. And they did so at a time when they could have been an island completely surrounded by a sea of development. Well, luckily, it has not turned out that way. Not luckily, but through the enormous dedication and labor of the people serving on the various committees and the proponents of this and the city and county leadership and the folks, like Ken, you who were involved in providing your expertise. But what that plan enabled is exactly what you said. We did break the impasse by purchasing a farm from one of the dissenting landowners, and of course demonstrating credibility, the commitment to the future, that we really meant it, that it was meaningful to the citizens and to the economy and to the vitality of the community to preserve this rich farmland. And since then, dominoes have been falling. It's quite expensive work, so they can't fall as quickly as we might like them to. But I just wanted to say that, yeah, that happened just exactly in the way that you had predicted that it could. And so that's a real win. And then just two other quick comments is the value of having this plan. City and county leadership changes every 2 years, if not more often. And so the value of having this adopted plan as the foundation that's of record, that this is, as a guide for these efforts to go on, even as city and county leaders may change, is enormous, so that there aren't as many fits and starts and we can gain some momentum, which we have, and credibility with funders. And so that's just a really important point, I think, out of all of this. And then, yeah, I'll just echo what Christy and Annalie have commented, and Ken acknowledged too, those trail connections. I mean, this farm preservation area is sandwiched between two really important natural areas, Bar Lake State Park and the South Platte Greenway, where the county and the state and others have made enormous investments in recreation and the natural environment. And this is sandwiched right between those. So the fact that there are these trail connections and potential trail connections is a really legitimate piece of community vitality. And it really helps us go get grants from people like Great Outdoors Colorado and others as we're doing this work. So I'll leave it there, but just really pleased. Ken, I've ordered 4 copies of your book. I haven't had a chance to receive them yet and do the full reading, but can't wait to get them. And I do plan to use them well to try to continue working to bring the money to get this work done. Thanks, everyone.
I'd like to echo, if I may. Thanks, Chris. Is that okay, Annalie? It was very fortuitous that with the real estate bust back in, was that 2008, 2009? Everything came to a screeching halt. And yes, our property was already in a conservation easement, but the developers were just taking out permits to build huge tracts of houses and so forth. And now, all of a sudden, everything dried up and came to a halt. And it was very good because it began to give our city council, Brighton, as well as commissioners, some pause to say, what do we want Brighton to be like? Is this what we want, houses everywhere, to be like Parker, which was a great community one time, but was now completely destroyed with development. And I'm just very happy that out of that, then a new attitude was birthed to look at farmland and preservation. And I think in Ken's book, we see the government activists really helping, really being leaders, and we need to have their help to kind of combat, if you will, future developers. So again, that was a little bit of the history. So enough.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Christine, for those words. Yeah, Christine's with the Conservation Fund and has done a lot of work in this area and seen a lot of these properties preserved. We have about 4 minutes left, so we have time probably for one more quick question, and then I'll wrap it up and make sure I'll share the information about the book as well. So if you have a question, please hit the raise hand button or chat it in these remaining couple of minutes. Christine, I see your hand still up, so if you have something to add.
No,
Okay.
I just don't know how. I'll lower it.
Okay. Good.
Sorry.
Okay, it looks like Dennis, I will allow you to talk, and while you do that, I will pull up the final slide.
Dennis, your microphone is muted.
I got it.
There you go.
Right. I just to comment on, Tim, what you said. I think that through Farm Credit Administration and through the USDA, what was formerly the Rural Development Office, and the local officials that are state directors of those agencies would be very receptive to advancing this enterprise, to advancing and creating opportunities for all of those that would like to be stakeholders. And I think everyone needs to pursue that avenue. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Dennis. If Ken or Tim, you want to respond or say any last words about anything in this last couple of minutes, please do so.
Nothing for me, but I've just to say I've really enjoyed doing this, and I'm really happy to see how much forward motion there still is since I was last in Brighton, and I hope it will gain even more momentum as you go on.
We cannot afford to be complacent. We must be diligent and ready.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you to our panelists. Ken, thank you for joining. And this is one of the blessings of virtual and Zoom being so prevalent, that this was pretty easy and painless to put together. And we really appreciate your time. Tim, thank you so much for joining. I will get you those brownies that I promised. I will drop those off. So on the screen, there's a link to learn more about how to purchase the book, learn more about the book, and learn more about Ken's work as well at islandpress.org. And then if you're interested in learning more about the district plan and Historic Splendid Valley and our projects, you can also visit brightonco.gov/Splendid Valley. So with that, thank you so much, everyone. We will we'll share this recording and make sure more folks are able to see it. And have a great evening.